Welcome to Complete BS, the official podcast of couch coaches everywhere. Not just football. It's every sport that ruins your parlay, wrecks your fantasy week, and still brings you back for more. Buzzer beaters, blown leads, and brackets and flames. Yeah, we're all over it. Unfiltered takes, armchair analysis, and enough bold opinions to fill a playbook. Hosted by Brian Schmuck, sports junkie, the Saban of stats, and your official voice of I could coach better than that. Let's go.
Welcome back, Couch Coach Nation. I'm Brian Schmuck along with AV.
All right, BS, we're talking All-Americans, college football, All-Americans, that is. We're going to go with the defense this time. We went through our offense last time, so we're going to get some defensive All-American picks. I'll throw in a couple of names to watch as we go and just kind of talk football. What do you say?
Absolutely. Let's do it. We're going to start with defensive ends.
So you got?
Love the defensive end position. We're getting after the quarterback here. Let's start with the Clemson Love Fest. TJ Parker, right? I mean, granted, I think this isn't a biased Clemson on my all Clemson year. I think this is the top returning defensive end in the country. 6'3", 265, 12 sacks in 2024. That's the most among returning P4 players. What's going to take him to the next level is the compliments around him. He's got the best defensive line in the country. Will Helt is transferred in, going to be opposite from him, 6'6" defensive end. Then you got Peter Woods in the middle. Most times when you have an elite edge rusher like that, you're going to try and double team them. There's not enough people on an offense to double team everybody on this defensive line. It's going to leave TJ Parker open for free shots on the quarterback, one-on-one matchups. 18 to 20 sacks is completely a realistic number for him. They've got new defensive coordinator Tom Allen coming in from Penn State. Last year, Tom Allen had Abdul Carter, third pick in the draft. Going to do a lot of similar things and bring that in for TJ Parker. For me, he's the top of the list. And then my number two, we're going to a true sophomore guy that burst onto the scene last year, Colin Simmons at Texas, 6'3", 238. And man, this guy is fast. He had 9 sacks last year, 14 tackles for loss, only a freshman. Got a linebacker on the other side of him, Anthony Hill Jr., that we'll talk about later. Anthony Hill himself, he's an 8-sack guy. You can't double these guys up. They're coming left and right. And so Colin Simmons is my other defensive end.
Who else were you looking at? Also
staying young, South Carolina's Dylan Stewart. I think he's also a sophomore, maybe just a notch below Colin Simmons. 6'5", 245, got that prototypical size, was an instant impact as a freshman. Big question for them is going to be where some of these other guys have those running mates to keep the offensive line honest, tight end, chipping, running back. Dylan Stewart doesn't have that. 3 guys off their defensive line last year all got drafted into the NFL. So it's him. So he's going to see a lot more double teams that could keep his production down, but does not take away at all from his talent. And then Dennis Sutton at Penn State. He was the number 2 guy there with Abdul Carter last year. 8.5 sacks to Abdul Carter's. I think Abdul had 16. He's going to be the guy now this year that's got to step up. I'm not saying that he's going to be Abdul Carter 2.0, that he's going to get 16 sacks, but he's the guy. He's the one that you're going to have to key on that Penn State defensive line.
I'll throw another name at you. Trey Moore from Texas. He transferred in from UTSA a couple of years ago. He had 14 sacks in a season at UTSA. And then last year at Texas, he had 6.5 sacks and 10.5 tackles for loss. So if he builds on that 6.5 sacks, he could end the year with 10 sacks playing for Texas in the SEC.
And who are you blocking there? You got him, then you got Simmons, and you got Anthony Hill.
And I'd also throw in Will Helt from Clemson. Did you mention him?
I mentioned him as being a compliment to TJ Parker.
He transferred in from Purdue where he had 5 sacks. Now you throw him on a defensive line with TJ Parker and all the other defensive players they have, and he's going to get 7, 8, 9 sacks probably. All right, let's move inside to the defensive tackles.
Defensive tackle, it starts with Clemson, Peter Woods. But legitimately, Peter Woods is probably my top defensive player. Him and Caleb Downs, that we'll talk about down in a little bit, I'm sure, at safety. But Peter Woods, I think, is the best defensive player Definitely the best on the front four. 6'3", 310. Last year, he played out of place because of some injuries. He was having to play outside a little bit. He now comes back inside. He can rush the passer from the inside. He can clog it up in the middle. He's a beast. He's also got a partner there inside, DeMonte, was it Cape Hart? He gets overlooked. This is a guy who's going to play in the NFL. They've got 4 guys on that defensive line that are all going to the NFL. Cape Hart is a senior. This is his last year. I've seen him play, and he's not Peter Woods, but you take Peter Woods off that team, and you might be talking about Cape Hart, at least as an all-ACC player. He's that good. So when you have him next to Peter Woods, and you got the 2 defensive ends out there, again, there's not enough guys to block them. All these guys are going to eat. I've got Lee Hunter at Texas Tech, 6'4", 320. Big space eater in the middle. He transfers in from UCF. A lot of times we talk about transfers coming in and are they going up in competition? He's coming from UCF. They played in the Big 12. He's played this competition before. He's been able to produce at this level before. He leads all returning interior linemen with 27 career tackles for loss. This is a guy that's going to get it done. He was one of the big coups for Texas Tech in their portal spending spree last year coming in. The rest of that defensive line, Texas Tech, all new, all transfers. How are these guys going to play together and what their scheme is? I really like their new defensive coordinator that came in, young guy, but Lee Hunter, he's somebody that's going to be talked about a lot more that you may not have heard of so much.
Give me a couple other ones that you were kicking around.
Christian Miller, Georgia. When you talk in defensive line, it seems like Georgia every year has a big body, an elite player in the middle. I think he's all SEC. Does he make that jump to be an All-American? Is he going to level up this year to be that elite? Sure looks like it, so I'm looking for him. And then the Godfather, Dante Corleone from Cincinnati. You got to love the nickname. I mean, if your last name's Corleone, you're the Godfather. A little bit smaller at 6'1", but 335. And this is a guy that, due to some blood clots in his legs, missed some time training last year. The numbers were kind of down. He's going to have a whole offseason of training, getting ready, getting his body healthy. He had a big freshman year. The numbers have kind of been off a little bit. If he can recapture some of that from his freshman year, look out for the Godfather in the middle of that Bearcat defensive line.
You just like saying the name.
Absolutely.
All right. I got a couple names to throw out. Dominique Orange from Iowa State University. He was all Big 12 honorable mention last year. He was on Bruce Feldman's freaks list. He's been productive. He's super athletic. If he takes the next step, he'll be all conference.
So I love the pick of Orange, a little bit off the radar for Iowa State. They opened the year out in Dublin against Kansas State. It's the first game of the college football season, so all eyes are going to be on him. Everybody's going to be hungry to get back and watching football. Everyone's going to tune into the Kansas State-Iowa State game. He'll have a real opportunity to try and shut down that running game there with Kansas State.
All right, this is my favorite position on defense is linebackers. So who do you have as the best linebackers in the country, BS?
It's funny that you mentioned that because I think linebacker is almost becoming a lost art. You got so many teams now. We've got a lot more nickel and dime where you're playing 5 and 6 defensive backs. You're running a 5-2 or a 4-2-5, something, and the linebacker gets lost so many times. Again, I'm a traditionalist. I've got 3 linebackers to start out with, and then a couple more we can talk about. Anthony Hill Jr., Texas. That's the guy. That's the number one. I think that across everybody's board, over 100 tackles last year, 16 and a half tackles for loss, 8 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, and an interception. What aren't you doing, Anthony Hill Jr.? Top tier athlete. He was a 5-star recruit coming in, and he has produced at that 5-star level from day one. Kyle Lewis at Pitt, 6 foot 225. Depending on the service that did the All-American, he was listed as an All-American last year by a couple of outlets, so we'll call him a returning All-American. 101 tackles, 7 sacks, 16 tackles for loss. One of the most complete defenders in the country. Pitt's schedule is heavy late in the season, so they can pile up some wins early on, and then as you get later into the year, Pitt might have a record that gets them some primetime games, gets some bigger games, and that's going to have more people tuning in saying, wait a minute, who's that linebacker for Pitt? He's really good. Now we're jumping down to the group of 5 for my final linebacker. Probably not a lot of folks have heard of Red Murdoch, but you probably heard of Khalil Mack from Buffalo. His last year at Buffalo, Khalil Mack, 100 tackles, 10.5 sacks, 19 tackles for loss. Last year, Red Murdoch, 156 tackles, only had 2 sacks, not the same kind of pass rusher, 16.5 tackles for loss, 7 forced fumbles. This guy's everywhere for Buffalo's defense. He is a tackling machine. He is going to put up another 150 plus tackle season. He spends time in the backfield. He's not getting the same sacks, but you add 7 forced fumbles to your stat line. Red Murdoch is a really good linebacker for Buffalo.
Give me a couple of extra ones that you considered.
LSU's got 2 really good linebackers. Whit Weeks, 125 tackles. He was their leading tackler last year, 10 tackles for loss. He's solid. Harold Perkins, man, we all remember he came on the scene as a freshman and everyone was like, who is this guy? He's like Superman out here. He was phenomenal as a freshman, and then he's disappeared. And I don't think that the LSU coaching staff has been using him in the right way. He's got star talent. Can he be used properly and put up those same kind of numbers and have the impact on the defense? That's all going to depend on, of course, his health, but also how he's used by the LSU coaching staff. And then Gabe Akis at Illinois, 13 tackles for loss, 8 sacks, disruptive edge force. This guy's big. As an outside linebacker, I think he's about 275. He's fast. He's got the speed. Somebody that gets after the quarterback for Illinois who's primed to have a really good year.
One guy I think that needs to be brought up in this conversation is Torian York from Texas A&M. He was a freshman All-American in 2023 and all-freshman SEC in 2023. Last year, he led his team in tackles. He was 12th in the SEC in tackles. He's going to be one of the better linebackers in the SEC this year. He's a really good player for A&M. And Elko's a defensive guy. He knows how to use him. Here's another name for you, B, and you'll be really happy to hear me say this. And I honestly do think, even though I don't like to admit it, I think he's going to be really good this year. And that's Sammy Brown from Clemson. Former 5-star, I think number 1 linebacker in the country the year he came out.
I like the player, of course, and highly recruited out of high school. Now is the time for him to make that jump. The defensive line in front of him, we already talked about, best defensive line in the country. They're going to keep him clean. So he's not going to have the offensive line getting to the second level and taking him out of a play. He's going to be able to play clean, play fast. I'm excited to see what he can do. I just wasn't ready to put him up there yet because I needed a little bit more show me.
All right, let's move to the defensive backfield. Let's go with corners first.
Sophomore, sensational sophomore, Leonard Moore, 6'2", 190. I love corners that are tall. You give me a 6'2", 6'3" corner, I love that. I think they're so versatile in how they can play versus that 5'9", 5'10" corner. With this passing game now, you've got so many receivers that are 6'3", 6'5". How are you going to cover 6'3" Jeremiah Smith with a 5'9" corner? So I love Moore's height. He was a freshman All-American, 11 passes broken up, 2 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles. One of the things about Notre Dame, though, I think their schedule is pretty weak. I see them being up in a lot of games. And what makes it interesting there is teams are playing from behind. They're going to have to throw the ball a lot more. And so a lot of times you'll have a corner that's not going to get as many opportunities because they know who you are and they're not throwing your way. I think teams are going to be forced to be playing from behind, and they're going to have to throw against Notre Dame, and that could really put his numbers over the top. When you look at a shutdown corner, someone that's going to take away your opposition's, their number 1 receiver, you look at Jermon McCoy from Tennessee, 6', 193. I think he's somebody that you can lock up one side of the field and know, all right, we're good over there. 4 interceptions, second-team All-American last year. Tennessee has to replace a lot in their front 7. The secondary is going to be the strength of their team, and they're going to need him to step up and be a leader.
Cornerback's one of those positions where preseason picks are hard. Who else were you thinking?
Well, I got to go back to my favorite team this year, Clemson, and Avion Terrell, AJ Terrell's younger brother. I think he's somebody that can do it all. He's got lockdown skills like his brother. When he was being recruited, he actually said, Dabo said to him, "You will be better than your brother." And so I think that speaks volumes for what his upside is and what he can do. And then Jair Hill from Michigan. Michigan's had a good run of corners in the past couple of years. And Will Johnson last year went into the NFL. I think Jair Hill is primed to step into that role and be their lockdown, their number one corner.
A solid list. And let's round it out with the safeties. Who you got?
We talked about Ohio State consensus on the offense, Jeremiah Smith. If there's a consensus on everybody's list for defense, it's safety, Caleb Downs. He does everything. He's a returning All-American, 6', 205. This is a guy that's going to get drafted early. He may become the highest safety ever drafted in the NFL. Right now, it's a two-way tie between Eric Berry from Tennessee and Sean Taylor from Miami. Both were drafted 5. You could see Caleb Downs go in the top 4. He's that good. He needs to take on, for me, a leadership role on this defense this year. There's only 3 returning players on the Ohio State defense. They lost their defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles. He's at Penn State now. Bring in Matt Patricia from the NFL. What does Downs do? He can play in the run. He can play in the pass. Everything on the field he can do. The next step in his game, in his progression that's going to separate him in the eyes of the NFL executives and put him into that top 4 is that leadership component. And what does he do there? I think probably the most versatile player in college football. If you needed him to get up into the front 7 and blitz, he can do that. He can play anybody's wide receiver, tight end, running back out of the backfield. I can't say enough about him. He's that good. And then Coy Parrish from Minnesota last year, he only started 3 games and still had 5 interceptions. He was a second-team All-American, freshman All-American, all Big Ten. He did this as a freshman. He only started 3 games. So he's primed for a big year. No one's going to be asleep on him. Everybody knows the name Coy Parrish now from Minnesota. Big Ten offensive coordinators are going to have to know where he's at, but I expect him to continue to grow.
You nailed Caleb Downs in terms of being the best in the country, and it's not even close. So after Caleb Downs and Coy Parrish, who do you have?
So I'm looking at Rod Moore from Michigan. Can he bounce back from a ACL injury? I think the talent is there, the ability. So what does he do? What's this year look like? It's kind of more of a projection. I think he will be there, but you never know coming off of that injury. And then KJ Bolden at Georgia, another sophomore. We got a lot of really talented young football players this season. And he's going to step into that role to replace Malachi Starks, who went in the first round of the NFL draft. KJ Bolden is good enough to make you forget about Malachi Starks. If you're a Georgia fan, you won't miss him. KJ is that good. I think he's somebody, depending on how Parrish does and what his year looks like, at the end of the year, your All-American safeties might be Downs and Bolden. But I'm going to leave him as the others to watch for right now.
The one name I will add to the list is Aiden Schuler from Notre Dame. He was a freshman All-American, ran track in high school. He fits the mold of being really athletic like these other guys. He was really productive and good as a freshman. So we'll see if he can take the next step. But he's a good player and fun to watch also.
Really strong secondary there at Notre Dame with Leonard Moore as well.
That takes us to the defensive specialist, punter.
Punter is one of those things that I'm sure we're going to look back at this, and this is going to be the first thing that we get wrong.
I don't know about that.
Who's going to have the big leg, the big punt? And sometimes you look at a guy that has big punting stats. Well, it's because the team is not very good. So I've got one team that's not very good and one team that is good. I'm going to start off with my All-American punter is Ryan Eckley from Michigan State for my team that's not very good. He was the Big Ten leader last year in net punting, 47.9, just shy of 48 yards. Had 20 punts over 50 yards with a long of 61. So he's definitely getting it done with the leg and being able to flip the field for Michigan State. He'll be called on probably a lot. And then one guy who's not going to get as many attempts to punt because their team is good is Georgia's Brett Thorson. He did average 47 plus on 45 punts last year. So Eckley might be more in the 60, 65 punt range. Thorson's just getting over 40 punts for the season. But that would be my 1 and 2 for punters.
So that rounds out the defensive All-Americans.
The big thing for me that as I was putting this list together that I enjoyed so much is the youth that we've seen. There's so many guys that are coming into their sophomores, whether they're true sophomores or redshirt sophomores, that I know we're going to get to see them in 2025. We're going to be talking about them this time next year at 2026 because they're still playing college football. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. This has been Complete BS.
Thanks for listening to Complete BS. Be sure to subscribe, share, and follow us online. And tell us what you think of this episode. Use hashtag CouchCoachNation, and let's keep the conversation going.